This is The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zammit. Let's get on with the show with the news, the views, the reviews, and interviews. Making news this time around, Rebel Scum Con, which is a convention called Rebel Scum. It was in Dallas, Texas over the weekend in America. It's come to an end. It was a 3-day event. It was the 3rd annual event for Rebel Scum Convention. Short for convention. Anyway, more about that in my review section later in the show. To more news, counting down to the days of Starfighter reveals. We're possibly going to get reveals at D23 later this week. Saturday Australian time and Friday American time, but I'd say later on in the evening in American time from what I can understand. And so that's counting down the days away to what we may get for Starfighter, which is a movie coming out in 2027 starring Ryan Gosling and directed by Sean Levy. It's a very highly anticipated film for Star Wars fans, and I would say the common going audience as well when they get to hear the possibilities of this particular film. Anyway, so that is the news for this time around. Let's get into views. Views is either my viewpoint, opinion, idea, or a viewpoint that I have in a storytelling idea for Star Wars. And this time around, it's going to be about, is AI deserved to be known as AI slop? It's commonly known as AI slop because it's not really completely there audibly or visually yet, but it's pretty close. And if you ask me, sometimes it's that seamless that you don't know you're watching an actual computer telling you a story about a little section of Star Wars, whether it's connected to the canon universe or if it's just in a standalone. But anyway, is it deserved to be known as AI slop? I'd say 0. I don't think of it as AI slop. If you're going to call that AI slop, then you might as well call things that in the past, everything in the past, CGI slop, practical effects slop. I mean, let's have a look at the original trilogy. There's a lot of things in that particular trilogy that you could look as where it could have been done better. You know, some things come off in a funny, humorous way, like the little eye that was coming out of the garbage compactor in New Hope. That looked a little bit sort of funny, but at the same time it was meant to be a serious, some sort of alien in the garbage compactor. But no, I think, look, people who refer to AI slop are really against the whole AI thing because it seems to be quick and easy for these type of movies coming out on YouTube, especially fan films. I think it's great. I think it is part of the future, and I say part of the future of telling stories in the cinema. You know, no matter how you utilize you telling a story, it's the story that counts the most. And if AI is going to work, or if CGI is going to work, or if practical effects is going to work, or if just regular images is going to work, then use that. I think AI, especially the fan films, you know, I would say 95% of them are really good storytelling. That's what I'd say. Anyway, so that is my views for this time around. Let's get into reviews. Reviews this time around is going to be Rebel Scum 2026 Convention. So it's Rebel Scum Con, which is convention, but it's in, obviously, this year, 2026. It happened over the weekend. Look, from afar, this is going to be a review from afar. Like, I'm in Australia, Melbourne, Australia. I'm nowhere near Dallas, Texas. But from what I can tell from the vlogs and videos that were put up on, which is not stacks, but there was a bit, I tell you what, the actual show floor was a partly smaller version to what you get at Star Wars Celebration. It looked comprehensive, really organized, really slick, really good. Like, I just thought the stuff that you could get there, you could almost get at Star Wars Celebration, almost comparing it, you know, side by side. It was magnificent. The panels, from what I could tell, seem to have needed a little bit of work, I think. A bit disorganized in part, but still look good, still had a professional way, but I just think these panels could be worked upon a little bit more organization to it, is the best way to put it. But they were still, enjoyable. But the lineup of guests for photos and autographs is amazing. Let me just tell you some of them. Let me just look it up right now. It was absolutely amazing. Like this compares to Star Wars Celebration. Look, we had Bryce Dallas Howard. She's the director from Boba Fett, Skeleton Crew, and Tales of the Jedi. Just a couple of episodes in between. I mean, John Boyega, man, he was one there that's a big name. I'd love to get a photo or an autograph from that guy. There was even Dennis Haysbert from the Maul animation series. There was even people from the Acolyte, even Mandalorian and Grogu, even Andor and more with Maul. But there were just a lineup of guests was amazing, and the way that they were structured, from what I can tell via video, was pretty structured, pretty good. You probably get away with a bit more illegal photography, hence why there was a sign there which I thought was quite humorous: no smart glasses allowed. I don't have some smart glasses, but boy, that's a bit of a problematic sort of thing. Anyway, so that is my review for Rebel Scum 2026, which from what I can tell from afar is about an 8 out of 10. This is going to really compete with Star Wars Celebration in the years to come if Star Wars picks up its pace. Okay, so that was reviews. Now let's get into interviews. Interviews is usually my last lot of questions on my last particular video. I don't really use Twitter, Instagram, or any other services at the moment with actual messages and questions or comments. Just put it on my last particular video and they shall be read, deemed appropriate for the channel. On the next episode, which this is the next episode, so let's look at the last video. Anyway, Michael from Werribee South, which is a part of Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Werribee South, it's on the other side of the bridge. I've told you many times, but I'll tell you again. Anyway, he's come in and he's asking, who bore the heavier burden of the Skywalker legacy? Luke, Leia, or Ben Solo, or who ultimately handled that burden the best? I think the second part of the question, who handled it the best, was Luke Skywalker. He was the one that had the initial belief that there was still good in Darth Vader. But I think all of them technically would have had that burden for the rest of their lives, including Anakin Skywalker, which was Darth Vader at that point. This is a story timeline, not a real life event, but I think all of them would have burdened the failures at that time. But I think Luke Skywalker initially came off with there's still good in him. Anyway, the next question, did the Skywalker bloodline ultimately bring more harm or good to the galaxy, considering they produced both its greatest tyrants and its greatest saviors? I think both. Again, once again, both, but I think more. Be honest, there's a bit. Look, to be honest, it's more badness than good that came out of it. But without that badness, the good would never have come. In the story of Star Wars, in the story of the Chosen One, but I think personally, I'd say a little bit more with the badness to the galaxy, but unfortunately had to go through that badness to get to the good, which is sort of a lot of things that happen in regular life. You got to do a lot of bad to get to good in types of ways, if you can understand. Anyway, so the next question, was Rey justified in adopting the name Rey Skywalker at the end of Rise of Skywalker, or should she have embraced the Palpatine lineage or remained just Rey? There's arguments for all of that. In my opinion, I actually am the believer that Rey Skywalker, the way she sort of got it, was sort of like a person being adopted. I think people really forget that she really did not want to be a part of the family that she came from, and she, really was seeking family throughout the 3 episodes she was in, 7, 8, and 9. I think it just shows, the tragic, but the savior of being adopted, even though it was not really officially adopted, as Luke and Leia had passed at that time, but there was a communication between them all, as you saw at the end of Rise of Skywalker, and they all seem to be happy. And I think that is the part of the story that people really get disgusted with. But I personally think, people who are adopted should be just recognized as people of the family. And I just see Rey as part of the Skywalker family, as she chose the path of good, and they really were there for her. But I will also say, she technically will always be a Palpatine, but she also would have come off artistically nice. She was always Rey, but then it would have been left, a story sort of not really complete, and it just, it needs to sort of have an ending to that, and it could have been good or bad. She actually was good, and in fact, the whole title of the film, The Rise of Skywalker, would have had to be renamed. So they actually released the name at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago. For that to be reversed as the movie was out would have been a big problem for Star Wars, or even movie-going fans. They would have been absolutely confused. You could have got away with it back in the day when they changed Return of the Jedi, the Revenge of the Jedi to Return of the Jedi, as Star Wars was big back then, but the change was a bit seamless. Nowadays, everything is so specific that I think it would have been a little bit lost in the mix, and would have caused a bit of a financial problem for Disney, Lucasfilm, whatever you want to say. Anyway, so I'm a person that accepts Rey Skywalker being adopted by the Skywalkers, and that's how I see it. And I think empathy, sympathy is just not being created out there by a number of people, Star Wars fans or not, but that's each to their own. Anyway, the final question for this time around: was Anakin Skywalker sacrifice at the end of Return of the Jedi enough to redeem him, or did his decades of atrocities as Darth Vader outweigh his final act of saving Luke? This is a massive flaw. This is if you're going to talk about flaws in episodes 7, 8, and 9, or even episodes 1, 2, and 3, depends on what generation you are from. This is a massive flaw. Darth Vader is not just a murderer, not just a mass murderer. He is a universal murderer. This person is actually worn by kids in real life, on t-shirts, on hoodies, on hats, on lunchbox containers, things like that. Yet he is a absolute universal murderer. Now I accept the story for what it is, and I get he's been turned to good at the last moment by Luke believing him, and I like the story. I really like the story. I think it's fantastic, but it is a flaw. You can't just do all of that and get away with it. I mean, think of those families and those friends had to deal with him murdering their friends and family. It is wrong. Even in Hollywood standards, it is wrong. But the story was unraveled back in the 80s, in 1983, I think it was, and it sort of made sense. But I think it is absolutely a big flaw that Star Wars to this day, even Star Wars fans, don't really, recognize, more recognition in the flaw of, just character arcs and of the latest trilogy we had, which is 7, 8, 9, flaws in that outweigh that. And that's the most iconic part of Star Wars is Darth Vader. Star Wars itself is iconic in itself, but Darth Vader is, pretty much the face of Star Wars, and is pretty much the face of being a universal murderer. But anyway, that is my thoughts. Anyway, and don't get me wrong, I love Darth Vader, the character. I love how he turned to the good at the end. I loved how Luke helped him go through that. I love Return of the Jedi. I love the original trilogy. I love the prequel trilogy, and I love the sequel trilogy in its own rights. Anyway, so that is the question. That was from Michael from Webber South, by mind you, that last question. And anyway, that is the Force Always for this time around. I'm here 3 or 4 times a week. Subscribe to the channel, The Force Always. Like and share, whatever you like to do. And until next time, my friends, keep rocking.